The definition of sexism is when a person's sex or gender is the basis for judgment, discrimination, and hatred against him or her. And many people don't give the same respect they do to female athletes as they do to males. And it takes more skill or success for female athletes to actually be respected or recognized.
There aren't a lot of females in martial arts, even though the Olympics may depict so. When my mom tested for her black belt, she was the only female in the studio, so she didn't have any other women to spar with. And later on, when I did championships, I'd be the only girl from my studio, even as the years went by. Females were underrepresented in my studio. And when it was my turn to do so for my second black belt, I didn't have any other girls to spar against since one of them was testing with me. Being paired against 4 guys was tough, but whenever I threw a punch or two, everyone looked at me like, oh wow, she's hardcore, and I was labeled with things that I knew the guys in my studio would never be labeled with. So in the end of it, there's an obvious discrepancy in the amount of boys and girls, but despite what history may say, martial arts knows no gender.
Females aren't the only victims of sexism in sports, however. In female-dominated sports like cheer and dance, male members are often stereotyped as gay or seen as less of a man, especially by individuals who don't participate in the sport. In reality, cheer is just as physically demanding as other types of sports, so it doesn't make much sense for male cheerleaders to be seen as feminine or gay. The prejudices male cheerleaders face by society as a whole oftentimes make it difficult for them to be accepted as athletes.
It's so weird. Still today I'll wake up and be like I'm a cheerleader. I used to go to wrestling tournaments and wrestle other guys, but now I'm cheering with girls. But it's I love it, but it's just so different.
For Kaylee, she's a veteran competitor, competing now on 3 teams for the OC All-Stars.
So this is my team, OC Black, which is a co-ed level 5 All-Stars team. And personally, I experienced the homophobia presented in co-ed teams, which I never really understood. We had plenty of heterosexual relationships with the team members on OC Black, and throughout our season, boys and girls would constantly flirt and go out on dates. Honestly, the males in cheerleading are often surrounded by females, so if anything, it's a smart tactic for straight guys to join. And even if they are gay, it's a personal choice, and the sport they perform shouldn't dictate their sexuality. Cheerleading demands gravity to be defied, and although male cheerleaders are not seen as true athletes, look at them holding up those girls in the air in what we call one man's or partner's stunts. Throwing them 30 feet in the air requires so much strength and determination that's forced to be reckoned with. The sexism in cheerleading needs to be redirected into giving these athletes the credit they deserve.
It's Kaylee, as she says, I'm ready. Kaylee Yap and Michael Can are filling in for 2 idle team members. No doubt they, along with the team, feel the pressure.
Cheerleading was traditionally an all-girls sport, and there are all-girl teams, there are co-ed teams, but there are no all-boy teams, and perhaps maybe this is why the view on men cheerleaders is so skewed.
Thing here, it's the next girl up, the next guy up, because everybody understands the purpose that they fill, and it's one spot, and everybody knows what to do, and we've gone through this before, and we'll go through it again, and honestly, these kids have done a great job handling the adversity.
The stigma is that men are better than women at sports, even though they put the same amount of effort and time in their practices and games. They are viewed and treated differently. They get better recognition from fans and even better gear. When I ran cross country, the boys and girls were both on separate teams and trained separately by 2 different coaches and received different workouts because the boys were expected to be at another level than us. However, we trained the same number of hours and days a week. When it came to race day, the boys would run and receive a bigger crowd surrounding the finish line. And it seemed like the crowd was more excited and loud for them.
When looking at sexism in the world of baseball, the most blatant example is that it is the only sport that instead of having girls baseball, they created an entirely different sport with modified rules, playing surface, and equipment, essentially telling women that they are physically unable to play alongside men. Although there are some women who challenge this structure, such as Melissa Mayou, the starting shortstop for the U18 French national team, and the first woman to be put on the MLB International Scouting map, we still see little to no women interested in trying to play baseball due to the socialized segregation. Another example of sexism in baseball is found in the philosophy of the sport. Every baseball player will tell you that at least once in their career they were told not to cry or not to be a bitch on the field, to even further widen the gender gap between baseball and softball. We see this in one of the most iconic baseball movies of all time, The Sandlot. When Hamilton Porter, or Ham, gets into an altercation in the film and resorts to the ultimate comeback in saying the famous line, "You play ball like a girl," to signify that women have no right to be on the same field as men.